My husband comes from a family of 5 kids. They lost one of them in a car accident in 1988. At the time, my husband was just 17 years old and his brother was 18. They were just 1 year apart. I met my husband in his late 30s, meaning I never got to meet his brother. His passing was very traumatic to the whole family. He loved motorcycles, cars, and although he was just 18 years old, he was already working as an auto mechanic. One day, one of their neighbors, who was just about the same age as them and who he used to hang out with, was showing off his new bike. So everyone was excited, they wanted to check it out, and my husband's brother asked him if he could drive his bike for just a few minutes, just around the block. He just wanted to feel it. And his friend said, "Yeah, sure, go ahead, just enjoy, here's the key." That was going to be his last adventure. He drove his friend's bike literally just around the block. There was a van moving in his direction. The driver didn't see him because he had hit his dead spot. They crashed and the bike went flying and hit a pole. He died instantly. It was a shock to everybody. The entire neighborhood attended the ceremony. The accident made the local news. When I met my husband, about 20 years after the incident, I noticed that they didn't mention his name very often. They didn't talk about him. There were no photos of him in the house. It was clear to me that the family's coping mechanism was basically to avoid talking about it. Of course, they mourned the death of their son and brother, but as the days went by, they avoided talking about it. So I knew nothing about his brother. When I met my husband and we were getting to know each other, he mentioned this story to me, but all I knew was that they were very close. They used to hang out together, that he was an auto mechanic, and that he had died in a car accident. I never asked too many questions because I knew it was a sensitive subject to him and his whole family. But about 10 years into the marriage, I wake up from a dream. Except it didn't feel like a dream at all. It even took me a few minutes in bed right after opening my eyes to make sense of whatever I had witnessed. And in this dream, I was chatting with his brother. And he was just standing there, leaning against his motorcycle. I was facing him, but although he never moved his lips, he spoke to me. He spoke through me. I would simply look at him and acknowledge his thoughts, a nonverbal communication type of thing. It was as if I could read him, read his mind, and not only his thoughts, but his whole persona, his character, his personality, his taste in music, his whole spirit. It was as though my brain had been placed in his body and I could experience life through him, non-verbally. And I just stood there looking at him and somehow chatting with him, getting to know him. And each second filled me with so much information on his life. I could feel that he had been wild. He liked going out, going to clubs. He was charismatic with the ladies. he was a negotiator. He often found himself doing business with whoever and whatever he had in his hands. He was very persuasive and could sell anyone anything. He wasn't attached to material things. I saw his possessions going around as if he was always doing business of some sort. Somehow I could tell that he was still living in 1988. His way of dressing, the music he listened to, the events happening in the world, the things he knew were going on in the world, to him it was still 1988. Nothing had changed. He didn't evolve with time. He was stuck in time. I saw a reference to the Cold War, meaning to him we were still living in it. He hadn't been following all the social changes locally or around the world, the evolution of music, who the current pop artists were, and the events in the family, like weddings and graduations and all the accomplishments that you witness as time goes by. And I felt that. I too felt like it was 1988. The same way that I can feel that this is the year 2024, I know it. I knew it was 1988 and it was so much fun. It felt good. It felt right. And I could see that he was happy, that he had had a happy life. Although he had had a short life, he enjoyed every minute of it and he had no regrets. And he told me, without moving his lips or using his voice, that he was very grateful to my husband for always being such a good friend. And that was so intense that I woke up. And the second I opened my eyes, I started remembering what I had just witnessed. And the more I thought about it, the more I remembered the things that we chatted about. And I knew that it had just happened. It had happened just a few seconds before I opened my eyes. So I poked my husband because I want him to wake up so I can share it all with him. Although I'm confused as to whether or not I should tell him, because I know he's not going to believe me. His religious background was very strict, let's say. He didn't believe in almost anything out of the ordinary. He always had a scientific explanation for everything. He didn't believe in spirits. He was against any kind of contact with the dead, tarot cards, even astrology. So, number one, I thought he wouldn't believe me. And number two, if he did believe me, he would freak out that I've been somehow communicating with the dead because he thought it was wrong. So anyhow, I start sharing everything. Although I have no idea if the things that I'm gonna tell him will make sense or not. Because I never met his brother and I could be describing something totally off from reality. And he would use that against me to make his point that I was just crazy, that it was just a dream, nothing more. So I start sharing everything with him. And he's a little uncomfortable, but he lets me go on. He's listening carefully and letting it all sink in. So I ask him, so what do you think? Does that make sense? Was he really like that? And he said, yeah, he was like that. He was wild. He had lots of friends. He was always up to something, going out. He would disassemble his car just to reassemble it all together from scratch. And he was very charismatic. He lived his life to the fullest. He listened to heavy metal. And then I mentioned the negotiator that I saw in him. And he laughed and he said, "Oh yeah, that was my brother. He would sell anything, parts of cars, albums. He was always making deals with whoever and whatever he had in his hands. He even sold a few of my albums without asking me. They would just disappear. And when he died, he realized that it had been his brother that was selling his albums to friends." So he went on and on telling me that he cared a lot for his brother, that they were very close. And he was the brother he got along the most with, since they were so close in age and they shared the same interests. And every now and then, his brother would do things that their parents shouldn't be aware of, and he would cover his bases. And I think that's what he meant when he said he was very grateful for always being such a good friend. We were both very overwhelmed, and I got confused. Why me? And why now? We had been together for 8 years already, and we hadn't been talking about him prior to that. It wasn't something that I had in my mind before going to bed. So, is something going to happen? Is that a sign of some sort? Did he show up to prepare us for something? Will there be a new baby in the family? A loss, maybe? I don't know. But I enjoyed it. I was ecstatic with that experience. I felt alive. And I wondered, do I have a gift that I didn't know I have? Is this going to happen more often? Can I do this for a living? But months went by and nothing out of the ordinary happened. And it never happened again. I'm grateful for that experience, for being chosen, and for helping my husband open up about his loss, but mostly for broadening his convictions, especially regarding spirituality.